All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. This is a bit of a different episode than you might be used to, although I have done episodes like this before. Most of the people who listen to the podcast are Winnipeggers or are elsewhere in Manitoba. And as everyone knows, at this time of year, there's an election happening. There's elections happening not just in the city of Winnipeg, but other cities across the province, Brandon, Portage, wherever. There are municipal elections going on at the end of October. And so whenever there's an election happening locally and there are people with connections to sort of the main thrust of this show, which is the local music scene, who are involved running as candidates, I like to try and have like kind of special election episodes and talk to people about, you know, what inspired them to get involved in politics and what Winnipeg needs and what Manitoba needs or whatever level of politics we're talking about. But today I have two candidates in different ridings in Winnipeg for council in the upcoming election, and you're both in different ridings, and you're not in my riding. So I kind of feel like I always have to make it clear that I'm not endorsing anyone or not saying do or don't vote for anyone. I just want people to vote. I want people to find out what the reasons are, what the issues are that they feel are important to improve the city, however they feel it needs to be improved. And I want people to do the research and get out and vote. So both of you have been on the podcast before in different contexts over the years. So I think the best way to start this off is if the two of you, because it's a music show, want to introduce yourselves and just like give a bit of background about what your bona fides are in the local music scene and what some of the bands you've been in the past and things like that. So let's just start with Omar because you're in the top corner on my screen right now. So introduce yourself and just a bit of background about what you've done musically in Winnipeg.
I guess my name's Omar Kinnarath. I'm running in Daniel McIntyre for the city council seat there. And yeah, I mean, I guess my first contact with the Winnipeg music scene was pretty much when I was like 14 or 15, going to shows at the West End Cultural Center. I went to Gordon Bell High School, so like it's not too far. So we'd always get the posters for events, and then we would always like go there. And from there, I mean, just getting involved in the punk scene and the hardcore scene in the city was like pivotal to my upbringing. You know what I mean? Like it's been very a focal point of what what made me who I am. And from there, I played in a few bands. I played in Intifada, Shut Up Winnipeg Hardcore, 1998, and when later on I played in a band called Rogue Nation, and just always around. I like all well, some of my best friends playing in bands and going to shows, booking shows whenever I can and stuff like that when I was a lot younger. Yeah, always being involved and trying to keep my ear to the ground of what's going on the music scene. Thanks to shows like yours, Sam. To keep us old heads all up to date on what's on the new. So yeah, that's kind of my background. And like as far as like politics and stuff, I don't think I'd be doing this if it wasn't for the music. I wouldn't be an organizer if it wasn't for the music and stuff that I was into and kind of like the mid to late 90s and stuff. It kind of just set me off on this course.
Yeah, for sure. What about you?
Well, I'm Natalie Smith. I'm running for Monarski City Council seat as well.
Yeah, sorry,
And
I didn't want to introduce you, so I didn't want to steal your thunder and introduce you for you. I wanted
no,
to,
that's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Like I've been making and writing music since I was probably I started playing guitar when I was 11, and I started writing music when I was about 13, and it's always been very closely linked to the experiences of growing up as a queer person in Steinbach, Manitoba. So it was always like a very strong creative outlet for me, and I knew from a very young age I was very interested in politics. So for me, music and politics have always been very interlinked. I started playing in Winnipeg bands in my early 20s, and I've been playing shows around the city ever since. Most recently, I think most people will know me from the band Silence Kit that I was in from like 2016 through end of 2019. And that gave me a lot of really cool opportunities to sort of really see what the music industry is all about. And it kind of showed me, as a, someone in my late 20s at the time, really showed me just kind of how just how messed up everything really is. And it made me realize how much I really love Winnipeg and I want to stay connected to Winnipeg. And so in the last few years, I've been really thinking about how to politically get more involved. And I recently joined the band Mully Grub as well. So it's good to be back in the music scene. So I'm kind of in this weird spot where I was doing it felt like I was doing nothing for 2 years, which of course was like perfectly lined up with the pandemic lockdowns. But now it's like now I'm playing music again, and now I'm running as a city council candidate. So it feels really good to be able to sort of have kind of a finger in two pots at the same time that I've always been a part of. So.
Cool. Well, and I think that one thing that both of you touched on too is that music and politics are fairly intertwined. I mean, regardless of genre, I mean, it's something that's always sort of been there, is having a voice to represent whatever community you're representing or whatever issue you want to bring to the forefront. Music's always been a really strong way to do that. But I mean, it's one thing to write a song with a political message, and it's another thing entirely to actually go about the process of running for office. And I mean, like, shout out to everyone who's doing it, regardless of where they sit politically. I would never do it. I can't imagine the stress and the pressure and the just the amount of work that goes into a campaign. Why? I mean, this is a question for both of you. I guess whoever wants to answer first. But why now? What made you feel like this is kind of the time to step in? Because I know you've both done work, a lot of work within the communities, and I mean, you've been around. You're familiar names and faces in both of your areas in terms of just being part of what's going on. But why this election? Why did it feel like this is the time to sort of take that step beyond just being an organizer or a community member or whatever?
Nat.
You want to grab that now?
I'm waiting for you. That's a really tough question because, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we're all a little bit crazier now because of all that, the isolation brain. But I don't know. I just feel that I think it's a combination of knowing that we're having a new mayor coming in. So no matter what, there's going to be someone new kind of leading everything. And that kind of, I think, gives us a jumping off point to potentially making some other changes there. But I think part of it too is, if you really look at how to really legitimately change things, it's a lot easier to change things on a municipal level without having, as entrenched political parties or, those sort of structures. And so there's a lot more room for grassroots people and ideas. And I think that the last few years have seen we're seeing a lot more of at least from at least where I stand and where Omar stands on these issues, like it's a lot more visible as to the cracks in our society, right? Like it's so much more evident. It's not that this stuff wasn't there before, but you can't look away. Like it's there all the time. So yeah, maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of like it came to heads or kind of around like the pandemic, right? Like when the pandemic started, you can see how poor our leadership at all levels was in just reacting to basic things. And like around the same time, like at the beginning of the pandemic, I started Mutual Aid Society, and like we're getting hammered with like requests and like just basic help and resources. And then I thought to myself, hey, if we're doing this with $0, you using like old school DIY punk rock ethics, just getting it done, why aren't these people who are in charge, why can't they have the same type of energy or the same urgency or the same type of organizational acumen as like we do, of just
when they have a budget for it as well, and
they have a budget for it, and we're doing all this work and connecting with the community, connecting community members with each other. And for me it was just that, just to see how poor like the reaction was to a crisis, you know what I mean? So I mean that kind of got the idea started in my head, okay, well, I mean, but at the same time, for the last couple of years I was waiting for somebody else to kind of jump in. And Daniel McIntyre, I was like, oh, maybe this person will do it, or this person will be a good candidate. But then, it was kind of overall frustration kind of going into spring, and like nobody's showing up, like nobody's like doing it, or maybe somebody's gonna do it, but they're from kind of from the same old clique that always loses in Daniel McIntyre or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to do it
Yeah.
because like I wasn't gonna let the incumbent go unchallenged. And here I am. You know what I mean? It's just it's been a trip, that's for sure.
Well, just kind of jumping off what you just said too, there's a lot of ridings in this election that don't have. I mean, there's two councillors who were just acclaimed,
Yeah.
and there's like a lot of other where it's just a 2 or 3 person contest. There's a few that are larger, but I mean, for the most part, there's like slim pickings for candidates. What do you think? What is the reason for that? I mean, I know Natalie, you were in a story recently about the lack of women running for office, and I mean, like, what is the issue here? Why are people having? Why is there a struggle to get candidates, especially when as you both said, there's issues. I mean, there's things happening in Winnipeg that are affecting everyone, regardless of what their background is or their financial situation, anything. I mean, we're all being affected by it. Why aren't people showing up?
It's hard.
Big time. Big.
It's not easy. Like it's going through this now, and that's probably going through the same thing. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to have your mind in check like all the time. You need to be responsive all the time. And talking to 100 people a day isn't easy. Luckily for me, I have that extroverted personality, and I can just do it. But that's still exhausting. Like as for someone extroverted, it takes a lot out of them, right? And
Sure.
it's like, and then when I get home, I just want silence. I just want like to talk to nobody, and it's not easy. And I can see why people don't take that step, you know what I mean? But I also feel that it's necessary for folks who I feel like have better or like organizational skills, or who are better speakers, who have more education in these types of fields, have more knowledge to take them. So it's like a lot of it is like it is hard, but at the same time, I think overall, like in this regard, especially like when it comes in the realm of progressives, like there's a huge fear of failure. You know
Right.
what I mean? Where like I don't think I have that same fear, because it's like it's just a learning experience. Like these are just the trials of your life. And like this has been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done too. Like win or lose, I'm gonna come out of this like a completely new person, from what I learned.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, yeah, do I want to win? I mean, hell yeah, I want to win.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, if I don't win, it's not for a lack of trying. Like I've put a lot of time, a lot of effort into this, and yeah, it's exhausting. I really love talking to people. I love talking to community members. The amount of times I talk to people who I know that like aren't aligned with me on a lot of political issues are some of the best conversations I have, because like one of the things, and I'm sure that Omar can relate to this, is like I live in a very working class neighborhood, so like the vast majority of people who are voters in this ward are people just like me, who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to keep a roof over their head, who are so everyone's coming from that perspective of things are really messed up. We need some change. And people who I would have never guessed would believe some of the things that they're telling me, are believing these things because we're just in this position right now. I mean, when I go literally just down any street and talk to people about some of their experiences recently, calling 911, being told, hey, we can't, no one's going to show up for an hour. No one's going to show up for an hour. Like that's just it's unbelievable. It's disgusting is what it is, because if there's no one there, and like this isn't just police, like this is 911 in general, right? Like our hospitals are backed up. There's no paramedics are having to stay with people in their hospitals for hours. So like there's no one, like someone has a heart attack, like it's we're in complete and utter failure of society. And so like people are like, well, we have to do something. And I think that means that people are a lot more open to new ideas, and that also makes it a little bit easier. But at the same time, like the same people with like the same funders are running again, and they're tough to beat because, like I mentioned earlier, there isn't that political, the political party structure. So it's all name recognition. So it's a lot of work. You know that as a non-incumbent, you face a really big uphill battle, and a lot of the incumbents decided to run this year, and so I think that's part of the reason. Like if you think about it, like my riding, or sorry, my ward,
Right, ward. I
there's
keep
five.
saying writing, but it's
Yeah,
ward. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, there's 5 people running, including an incumbent, and that's like pretty rare because 2 areas without incumbents are the other ones that have like the significant amount of like 5 and 6 candidates running, right? So, like, it shows that a lot of people are fearful because it's so hard running against that incumbent. And so if we had fewer incumbents running, we probably would see a lot more people taking an opportunity at it. I mean, look at Fort Garry or Fort Rouge last time. Like Jenny Gerbasi stepped down, and there was 6 or 7 people that stepped up, and that was like a pretty interesting race.
Yeah.
But yeah, like 2 people are acclaimed, a bunch of other people are running against like maybe 1 or 2 other people. So we gotta look at all sorts of different things in the upcoming few terms, and I don't know, maybe term limits is one of those things, but I don't know.
I'll write it. You second it when we get in.
Yeah, there you go. First thing, yeah.
First things first. This is like, yeah, like Nat said, I think getting more people involved, more diverse voices involved in council will only make the city better.
sure. Yeah,
But we have to allow the opportunity for that. You know what I mean? We have to allow for different types of folks, working class folks, to do this, because this is not, it's not cheap to do. And I feel blessed for the support that I got, but it's nowhere near, what the other candidates are doing. And even with the small resources Nat and I have, it's like it's not a walkover. You know what I mean? Like we're putting up a fight here, and they recognize it. So it's like something is like, money is one thing, name recognition is one thing, but I mean, you can't, especially in working class neighborhoods. Working class people understand one thing, man: work.
yeah.
If you put in the work, they'll recognize it. So we'll continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure if you had the answer to this, you'd already be, running shit. But what is the? I mean, I can't remember which one of you said this at the beginning, but the municipal race is so much more important for people's direct things that they deal with in their direct everyday lives than the federal one, especially. But people are so less informed and so less interested, it seems, in just following up on who the candidates are and what the issues are in their own local communities. And I mean, how do we? Is there a way to solve that? How do we get people, especially young people? Because I think that older people have been voting for decades. A lot of them are pretty entrenched in their ideas. They know who they want to vote for. They've maybe supported the same candidate for 3 or 4 elections now. If it's someone who's been running, been there for a long time. How do you get young people to, like, first of all, care about municipal politics, and then how do you get them to get involved, whether it's as a candidate, or just to be involved in someone's campaign, or just even learning about who they're I'm in one of the ridings that has a multitude of candidates, and it's a lot of work to even just look up who everyone is and find out what they stand for and make sure that not only this person is someone I want to win, but these people I don't want. You know what I mean? Like, find out, separate whose ideas represent me. And I think there's a lot of people not doing that, especially younger people. Like, how do we fix that?
I mean, yeah, that's the, I think it's the age old question, because there's always new kids coming into the mix when it comes to elections, right? So it's tough because like I don't, like I'm not obviously like actively ignoring young people, but it is tough to reach young people. Like if I'm knocking on doors, most of the time it's in houses, so it's going to be either someone who's renting that house who maybe is a little more established and has a family, or it's an older couple who's probably voted for how many elections now. So yeah, it's really tough reaching kids and the youth, and I say that as someone who I think a lot of people would still consider to be a youth. So I don't know. It's tough because there's, I mean, and I think it really shows especially in, areas of my ward that have, significant levels of poverty, all these people are just so checked out because, you know, they're lied to all the time, you know, about what things are going to come to them, because they know that nothing in politics is really for them at the end of the day, right? So, you know, I think that that's also something that we need to look into, is just like, how do we treat people who don't show up in general? And we have to ask the question of why. And the question is because they know it's a bunch of BS. So it's really important for me in particular to really, you know, be in those areas and talk to those folks and let them know that, like, no, like, part of my campaign is a big part of it's fighting for people like you, because, you know, it's been, you know, a select few voices with, you know, a select few interests for way too long. And I think that, again, kind of piggybacking off of this, let's keep talking about the working class folks, but, you know, they recognize hard work, but they also understand, they can tell what's genuine and what isn't. And that's definitely something that I talk to folks about all the time. Like, people will say to me, like, you know, I don't usually, like, some of the ideas you have here on your information aren't usually what I line up with, but you seem like a pretty genuine person. So I really like that. And I think that's also part of it, because, like, ideas are one thing, but it's about, like, how you come across. And, you know, if you're very personable and you're willing to listen, first of all, like, that's huge. So that's also part of it. So I think that's something that, you know, anyone who wants to run in future elections and is concerned about that, that's something you got to think about. You got to be real, and you got to be willing to listen, and not just be like, my ideas are great and that's why I'm running. You got to run because you want to listen to people and because you want to build things.
It's interesting you say that, because that has come up on this show talking about music. This might be just my impression that I keep forcing on people, but I definitely have the idea, and a lot of people have agreed with me, that Winnipeggers and Manitobans, but Winnipeggers in general, have a very strong bullshit detector when it comes to music. And I mean, a lot of the reason certain bands don't work out here and other ones do isn't necessarily about, you know, just raw talent. It's about how honest and how believable and how genuine they come across with their art. And I think the same thing goes for politics. I think people can smell, you know, when someone is being fake and when they're not honestly portraying themselves the way that they actually are. And I think that there's a lot of people in the city who want to have someone representing them who they can believe in, right? They not just, I like this guy's ideas, I like this woman's ideas, like this, whatever. They want to have someone that they actually can see as a representative of them, and that the person means it. I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's huge. Like, authenticity is like, you know what I mean? Especially now, I feel like in like in this day and age, like, folks are looking for that. Like, it's, you know, I've been told, you know, that people appreciate me showing up in a hoodie and like a pair of jumpers and sneakers and not looking like every jackass that shows up every 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, I've been told that this, like that this is very important it's important for me, to be honest. Like, you know, I can, like, again, I have a bullshit detector, so I can tell, you know, who's full of shit, and like who's like, you know, who's doing the real work. So it's, you know, and if you're not aware of that, you know what I mean, you're gonna get crushed. Like, people will grill you. People will, like, especially in the West End, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's like people here are loud, man. They're, you know what I mean? They you know, they speak what's on their mind. So, like, if you can't handle that, then, you know, like, don't run here. You know,
Yeah.
go run in, I don't know, like in St. Norbert or something, because it's, you know, that's what you're gonna face, is like, you're, you know, if you start speaking like above their language comprehension, you've already lost them. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm going to all sorts of places, and like, people will have told me they're voting for the first time, and they're voting for me because I don't, you know, pass myself off as that person that came from, you know, like, from the university to Ivory Tower pipeline. You know what I mean? I've come from punk rock, like you folks, you know what I mean? Like, in the music scene. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a completely different pipeline of how to get to where Nat and I are right now.
Well, and just to bring it back to that too, because, you know, this is a music show, but and there's obviously the connection between music and politics for sure. But how much of that scene, that growing up in a community where people, you know, have not necessarily similar ideas, but I mean, especially the punk scene, for example, it's a thing. It's not just like, hey, we all play in bands. There's a togetherness about it. At least there was when we were younger. That kind of really is memorable. Like, I think most people who came out of the punk community specifically have this kind of idea of that's where they're from, that's what their identity is, even if they're 65 years old now and they're working in a bank or whatever. There's something within them that still comes from that kind of sense of community. Do you feel like that music scene, whether it's punk, whether it's anything really, hip hop, it doesn't matter, has that kind of, that is something you'd like to see in the community as a whole, like that kind of togetherness
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
and support for each other? I think like the best part about punk rock is someone falls down in the pit, everyone picks them up, right? And I think is that sort of what you're hoping to see as candidates in the
Yeah,
city?
for sure. Like the ethics from the punk rock scene are driving my campaign.
Sure.
Do it yourself, get it done, and just just don't give up. You're gonna do, because what I've experienced, and you folks experience, like we've seen progress of folks who just went and did it. You know what I mean? Just went and did it, and now they're touring the world, and it's just like it gives us all such pride and such love, and but all those folks had us, right? They had the community to support them through it, and always going to their shows, always showing up for them. And the only reward we wanted was their success. You know what I mean? And it's the same how Nat and I are running, but we want to see the community's success. This is not for us. You know what I mean? This is not for our own personal interests. We see the problems, we see the people we love being affected. All we want is the best for them. So yeah, definitely being that community. And it's I wish the world was more like that. Honestly, because if we had, especially between friends, if there's a lot of love, if there's a problem, we hash out the problem. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it is, because there's so few of us. We can't lose one kind of deal. So we have to have transplant that into to general.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I don't have as strong as a connection to the punk scene as you two. My wife was very heavily involved, but for me, I was always kind of I mean, Winnipeg's a type of place too, where you'd have all sorts of different bands on different bills. So definitely played with punk bands, definitely know a lot about the history and I know a lot about the scene. But yeah, exactly what Omar said. It's music kind of teaches you how to just go out and do something, because if you don't, then it's never going to happen. And so that's definitely an attitude that I learned from playing music, whether that's recording, whether that's going on tour, trying to get gigs, whatever it is. If you don't go out and do it, then it's never going to happen. So that attitude definitely is driving this campaign. I looked around at who was running here, and I'm I bet I could probably do better job, because no one was talking about the things that were really important. Community, even some of the big things that everyone's talking about. You can look at anyone in my riding or my ward. I gotta stop saying riding, but in the ward, right? And people aren't talking about the big things. Literally, there's stats showing that people care about homelessness and they care about safety. And there's other candidates. So I've seen the materials. They don't mention either of those words, and it's if you're connected to the community and you're willing to do the work, then even if you don't win, you're still going to make some serious changes. And that's the most important part. It's winning isn't everything in this case. Would it be great? Hell yeah. But the most important thing is that Omar and myself and others who are getting involved for the first time are putting out new ideas that need to be out there and to be seriously considered. And if we didn't do it, then maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe it would have, but most likely wouldn't have happened. So you just have to do it, because it has to start somewhere, right?
Well,
with musicians, just come back with musicians, you make so many mistakes all the time. For perfection, right? So mistakes and failure is part of the game, right? So it's are there things that I should have done better in this campaign? Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. But that's not going to stop me from trying to achieve my ultimate goal, right? So it's being involved in music definitely gives you that. It's because I feel it from a lot of people who tell me who I think would be perfect leaders. And then tell them that they're really afraid of this sort of stuff. But for Nat and I, it's just whatever. It's just we'll just add another note here,
Right. Right on. So, one of the things that sucks about doing these online versus doing them in person, like I used to, is that there's a time limit. And so, before I let you go, again, I'm not endorsing anyone. Vote for who you want. Please, if you're listening to this, look up every candidate's platform in your ward, and make sure that you know who's who, and you're voting for the person that you support. But I'm going to give you a chance to plug where to find your information online for each of you, so in case people live in those wards and want to check out more. So let's start with Omar. What's the best way to find out about your campaign online?
Go to my website, www.ok4dmc.ca. You can follow me on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at OK4DMC. So just find me there. Connect with me. Like, I'm very fast at responding to messages. So, I mean, if you have any questions, comments, or guidance, link me up.
Cool.
And for me, Natalie, Natalie 4, the number 4 as well. Minarski. It's a little tricky. It's a Polish name. So MYNARSKI. So Natalie4minarski.com. That's the website. And my handle and everything is at NAT4 number 4 Minarski. Twitter, Instagram. I'm on the Facebook. I'm not on TikTok, but but the other ones.
People can find you.
You can find me. Yeah, and like Omar, send me messages, DMs, emails. I respond. I'm kind of an email responding fiend. So like if I get something, I'm gonna respond to it. So no.
Awesome.